This week was absolutely crazy when it came to finding video games. First off, at my local Goodwill store, I found Minecraft for the PlayStation 4, but when I checked the case, the disc was not there, which is a big bummer. Then when I kept looking, I ended up finding Uncharted Dual Pack for the PS3 for $6. This is the first and second game of the series, which is definitely awesome. I headed back to the back where they have a few more games and DVDs, but nothing was here. And then where the game, like, toy aisle is, they had a Guitar Hero guitar for Guitar Hero Live for $6 and a Rock Band for the Xbox 360 for $6 as well. But this was missing the adapter, so I didn't pick either one of these up. And while I was leaving, I noticed they had the Diablo Battle Chest for the PC. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the pickup of these dual pack of Uncharted. This is an amazing series. If you've never played it, you definitely need to. But for $6 on the PS3, I had to pick this up. I've already got the games, but this thing just looks awesome. I think when I looked this up, it's worth like $12, so it's not worth a lot of money, but I am glad to add this to the collection. So let's throw it in my collection and move on and see what else I can find this week. Next, I headed into the Cash America pawn shop that's right next to the thrift store. I headed in here in search of video games, but I didn't know if I'd find much, and I really didn't. I checked out the game section back here behind the glass cases, but didn't see anything. And then this guy was kind of standing in the way, so I got it there pretty quick. There was a Switch limited edition from the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but I didn't need to pick it up. It was like $3.50, so it was worth what it's going for. So I got out of there, unfortunately, with nothing, but right next door, at the Restore Rack Thrift Store, I actually ended up finding a bunch of stuff. Right off the bat, this Sega GT 2000 and Jet Set Radio Future for $5. This was actually in there and was complete, but I've already got 2 copies of this, so I left it behind for someone else. Then I saw this U-Draw Studio for the Wii, put that back pretty quickly and kept looking, where I ended up finding another Xbox game. It was just a sports game. Then I ended up finding Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 for $5. Then down below, I found a few more games here. God of War, definitely an awesome game, but I've got a few of those copies. Forza, not too bad here. Then I ended up finding Medal of Honor, and I continued on looking where I found this World of Warcraft PC game, and down below that was a bunch of other video games, which is totally awesome to see. But for the most part, this was sports games until I found Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance for the Xbox. I had to check to make sure it's still there, and this is complete, which is totally amazing. I'm really glad I found that. And then right before I left, I ended up finding NCAA Football 13 for $5. So each one of these games ended up being $5, which is not a bad deal. I almost put this back, but I did ultimately end up grabbing it. And I ended up heading out of this thrift store with 3 games, which is totally awesome. Because honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd find anything, but I found 3 good games. Starting off with the least out of the games was NCAA Football 13 for $5. Since they released College 2025, these prices have gone down, but picking this up for $5, I don't have it in the collection, so it's worth it there. Then I ended up finding Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 for $5. I've never played this game, and it looks like a ton of fun, and so when I flipped it over and saw the artwork, I knew I was picking this up. And last but not least was this complete copy of Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance for only $5. I remember when these games were going for extreme prices. Now they've kind of settled down to $15 to $20, but overall, spending $15 on these games at a thrift store is definitely well worth it. But the week's not over, so we gotta continue on hunting. Which led me heading into this local Easy Pawn store. Sometimes I find good stuff, and sometimes I don't at this one, so I don't go very often. However, today was definitely well worth going to. First off, I stopped by the game shelves where I checked out all the games, and a few of these games actually kind of surprised me when I saw them on the shelf, and that was this PS3 God of War game, Absolutely awesome game. And they even had a PS5 game here out, which was crazy. Then in the glass case, I ended up finding this controller for $5. I'm not sure why this is vertical, but trying to kind of get all this stuff at the pawn shop while I'm checking it out is kind of hard. But I also ended up picking up a Nintendo 3DS for $55, and overall this was just a great stop. Starting off, we've got the Xbox controller. This is for the Xbox One. It does work with the S as well, or the series, I guess is the right word. It does have the missing plastic rubber on the joysticks, so those will be replaced, but those are easy to replace, as well as the back needs a battery compartment. But this thing needs to be cleaned up and it will work just fine. For $5, that was worth it. But picking this up for $55 was absolutely insane. This is the aqua blue Nintendo 3DS. This is the very first one, which I've actually been looking for one of these because I like the small, compact aspect of this. I could slide this in my pocket and it's about the size of my phone. So for $55, I saw this, asked if it was working. Everything works here, so I ended up grabbing this. So for $65 after taxes, this was definitely a great pickup. But like I said, the week's not over. It's been insane. So let's continue hunting. Which led me to the first antique mall of the trip. And when I was here, they were having this outdoor sale. And I found this PlayStation 1, which I thought about picking it up. There was a box of cords with a bunch of controllers, but it was nasty and they wanted too much money for it. So I left it behind and headed into the actual antique booth, where I ended up finding this Togepi Squishmallow, but they wanted way too much money for it. So I put it back. Then I checked out this booth that's been here a while. They had a few games left, but everything is pretty much picked through. Then I continued on down the halls, and honestly, there wasn't much here. I found this Lego Minecraft set, which was interesting. I would pick this up if I was picking up Legos. Had to stop by the overpriced Nintendo Wii for $135. And honestly, I really didn't find much here, which is okay because this week has been pretty crazy so far. But there's one more antique store we've got to go to, and it was wild that I found these at it. And that is this antique store in my area called Next Generations. I hit this place up all the time. Right off the bat, I found some PS2 games. This DDR game looked interesting, but I don't play that game, so I left it behind. I didn't even notice that Luigi painting on the ground until I was starting to actually record for this, which is kind of a bummer. I found a Pokemon puzzle, and this booth has been overpriced for a few months now. All of these games are twice as much as they should be, so I continued on pretty quickly. I did end up finding something GameCube related, but it was just a third-party knockoff controller for $10, so I ended up leaving that behind. Saw a little Pikachu plush here and a few other plushes there. A Minecraft Lego set. This one, however, was $35, which is pretty expensive considering this is an antique store, but I digress. I continued on where I found a bunch of Super Nintendo games here in this display case, and honestly, that was pretty much all I was interested in picking up from this booth, just because everything in here was pretty much the same stuff, so I continued on pretty quickly after I realized I wasn't interested in any of that. There's a few controllers here, but they were like $20, so I left those behind. I did spot this Atari game for the PlayStation 1, and it had like 20 Atari games. I thought about picking it up, but ultimately ended up passing on it, which is alright. I found this ghost from Pac-Man that someone had like made themselves, as well as that Luigi had. A few games here, a few games there, but honestly nothing here that was catching my eye, so I continued on. But I did end up picking up 4 different Super Nintendo games, so this is definitely a well worth it when it comes to picking it up. I ended up getting 2 copies of Barbie for the Super Nintendo, and then 2 copies of Super Mario World. The Mario Worlds were 15 each and the Barbies were 10. Overall, he ended up cutting me a deal. It was 50 bucks flat. I didn't pay anything more than that. So I got out of there pretty happy. He covered the tax, so everything there was good. I'm thinking I'm going to be at a game convention soon that I haven't talked about on the channel. But if you follow me on the shorts, you might see stuff that I'm going to try to maybe trade these. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to clean them up and see what I could do. However, this week has been absolutely insane. The deals that I had in my area were just great, and I'm so glad that this week turned out to be so good. That Goodwill I thought was completely dry, and I hadn't found anything for a while. I ended up finding this Uncharted dual pack. Definitely cool. I absolutely love these games. When they came out, they just blew my mind, and they're still a ton of fun to play now. If you've never played them, you definitely should. Those Thrift Store game finds, the Xbox and Xbox 360 games like these, I don't see very often, especially not complete, and for $5 each, I'm going to pick those up all day. That 3DS, I think this is going to probably be my portable 3DS because it is so much smaller. And when I say portable, I mean when I go travel, I'll probably take this with me just because I like the aspect of how small it is and compact. The controller for $5 I think was cheap enough, but I really hope it works and I can replace those joysticks and nothing else is wrong with it. And last but not least, those Super Nintendo games. I don't see Super Nintendo games in my area for this cheap. Usually Super Mario World would be $30 and then the Barbie games would be $25, which is just crazy to me. But overall, I feel like these were some really good pickups and this week ended up being definitely well worth it. So if you enjoyed this video, comment down below. Let me know what you think. What would you have picked up that I saw and what would you pass on? Let me know all that stuff down below. But I'm getting out of here because I gotta prepare for that game con, which is happening very, very soon. So I'm getting out of here, so check out that video out if you haven't already. But overall, I spent maybe $125, and I feel like this was definitely well worth picking up. So I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna probably clean these games up as well. So if you haven't checked out that video, you definitely should. But I'm getting out of here, so check it out if you haven't already.